My name is Adrian Keller. And 3 weeks after I wired $2.8 million to buy my younger brother a penthouse, my mother told me I wasn't invited to his wedding, not because of money, not because of drama, but because, and I quote, "your presence would make people uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. After I gave him the single most expensive gift anyone in our family had ever seen. Let me explain. I grew up in a small 2-bedroom apartment above a hardware store in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other's business. My father worked construction. My mother cleaned houses. And my little brother Mason, he was the golden child. He had the smile, the charm, the easy laugh. I had the silence. I was the kid who stayed up late, fixing old computers pulled from dumpsters, the kid who learned to code from free online forums, the kid who got mocked for wearing the same hoodie every winter because we couldn't afford a new one. Mason got attention. I got potential. And potential, I learned early, is just another word for not good enough yet. When I was 17, I got into a top engineering program in another state. No one came to drop me off. That dad said he couldn't take time off. Mom cried but stayed home. Mason had a soccer game, so I took a bus with 2 suitcases and a backpack. I remember staring out the window thinking, one day, they'll see me. One day, they'll know my name. College was brutal. I worked nights at a warehouse loading trucks. I slept for hours a day. I failed my first advanced programming exam. I almost quit. But then something happened. During my 3rd year, I built a financial automation tool for small businesses, something simple that helped local companies track expenses in real time. A professor saw it. He connected me with an angel investor. That small tool became a startup. That startup became a company. And 5 years later, I sold it for $94 million. After taxes and investor payouts, I walked away with more money than anyone in my family tree had ever imagined. I was 29 years old. The first thing I did, I paid off my parents' debts. Mortgage, car loans, credit cards, all gone. I bought them a house in a gated community. My mom cried again, this time on marble floors. Dad hugged me for the first time in years. Mason posted about it on Instagram, proud of my big bro. Hard work pays off. The likes poured in. People suddenly remembered my name. Mason was 25 then. He had always been good-looking, outgoing, magnetic, but directionless. He jumped from job to job, tried to be a fitness influencer, then a realtor, then a crypto expert. Nothing stuck. Until he met Isabella. Isabella came from money. Old money. Her father owned several luxury hotels across the East Coast. Her family's Christmas parties were featured in lifestyle magazines. And suddenly Mason had direction. He proposed to her 8 months later. She said yes one evening. Mason called me. "Bro, can we talk?" He sounded different, hesitant. We met at a rooftop restaurant downtown. He looked nervous. "I want to be a provider," he said. "I don't want Isabella's family thinking I'm some guy living off her." I nodded. "I've been looking at apartments," he continued, "but the kind of place that fits her world. It's expensive." "How expensive?" I asked. He slid his phone across the table. It was a penthouse in a glass skyscraper overlooking the city. Private elevator access. Floor 2 ceiling windows. Infinity terrace pool. Price tag $2.8 million. He laughed awkwardly. "Crazy, right?" I stared at the screen. Then I stared at him. "You want it?" I asked. He blinked. "What, you want it?" "I mean, yeah, but that's not, I'll buy it." He went silent. "You're joking." "I'm not." His eyes filled with tears. "Adrian, you'd do that. You're my brother." That week I wired the money. No loan, no contract, no repayment plan. Just love. The closing documents were signed in his name. He posted the view from the terrace with the caption, "New beginnings." He didn't mention me when I didn't care. I thought this was what family meant. The wedding planning began. Luxury venue. Custom Italian suits. Designer dress flown in from Paris. Details screamed wealth. I wasn't involved much, which was fine. I'm not the spotlight guy. Until 3 weeks before the wedding. I was in my office when my phone rang. Mom. I smiled and answered. She didn't. "Adrian, we need to talk." Her voice was tight. "What's wrong?" There was a pause. "Maybe it's better if you don't come to the wedding." I laughed. "Very funny. I'm serious." The room went cold. "Why?" "It's just Isabella's family is very particular about what appearances." I felt my chest tighten. "I don't understand." "They feel your presence might draw attention." I stared at the skyline outside my office window, the one my company's name was etched onto. "Draw attention how?" "You're successful." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So it might make Mason look overshadowed by the man who bought him his home." "You're uninviting me," I said slowly, "because I make him look small. It's complicated." "No," I said. "It's not." I called Mason immediately. He didn't answer. I texted, no reply. Hours passed. Finally, he responded with one message. "Can we talk later?" Later never came. 2 days passed. Then I saw something that made everything clicked on an online article about Isabella's family mentioned the guest list for the upcoming wedding. Business politicians, CEOs, hyper names, and a quote from Isabella's father: "We're proud that Mason has built his own life independently." Independently, the penthouse was registered under Mason's name. Public records showed no connection to me, to the outside world. He had bought it himself. The narrative was clean. Self-made groom marries into legacy wealth. There was no room for a billionaire older brother who might rewrite that. The story wasn't inconvenient. I was disruptive. A week before the wedding, Mason finally agreed to meet me. We sat in his penthouse living room, the one I paid for. The city glowed behind him. "You knew?" I asked. He looked down. "I didn't want drama. So you agreed?" "It's just one day, Adrian. One day." He ran a hand through his hair. "They think if you're there, people will ask questions, and the truth is a problem." He didn't answer. I stood up slowly. "I gave you this place because I believed in you. I know I believed in us." He swallowed. "It's not about you. It's exactly about me." Silence filled the room. Then, he said the words that changed everything. "I need to build my own image." I nodded slowly. "You already have one." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I just won't be funding it anymore." I left. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. But that night, I made a call to my legal team. The penthouse wasn't in my name, but the maintenance fees, property taxes, and long-term association contracts, they were backed by a holding company I owned. Technically, Mason owned the property, but the luxury lifestyle tied to it, that was another story. The private concierge services, building membership privileges, the VIP access, agreements. All under contracts I could legally withdraw from. Didn't do it out of spite. I did it out of clarity. If he wanted independence, he could have it. The wedding day arrived. I wasn't there. Instead, I was in another city closing a deal that would double my net worth. But I heard about what happened. Halfway through the reception, guests began whispering. Someone had recognized the building in a photo. Slideshow: Mason and Isabella posing on the terrace. A guest from the finance world asked casually, "How did you afford that place at 26? Mason reportedly laughed it off, but then someone else mentioned my name, a venture capitalist who knew me. "He's Adrian Keller's brother, right?" Phones came out. Google searches happened. Net worth estimates appeared. Articles about my company's sale resurfaced within minutes. The narrative shifted. Mason wasn't self-made. He was my brother. The truth spread quietly through the ballroom like perfume. Elegant, inescapable. Isabella's father apparently looked furious. The illusion cracked and I wasn't even in the room. 3 days later, Mason called. He sounded exhausted. "They're asking questions." "Answered them," I said calmly. "They think I lied." "Did you?" Silence. "I just didn't correct them. That's still a choice." He exhaled sharply. "You really pulled the service contracts?" "Yes." "You're humiliating me." "No," I replied evenly. "I'm letting you stand on your own. You're being petty." I paused. "You uninvited me from your wedding. That was different." "How?" Another silence. He didn't have an answer. Over the next month, reality settled in. Luxury buildings are expensive to maintain. Without the bundled contracts I had secured, the monthly costs nearly doubled. Concierge access was limited. VIP privileges expired. Mason had to explain to Isabella why their own lifestyle was suddenly shrinking. Tension grew. I stayed quiet. I didn't badmouth him. I didn't post cryptic messages. I've just lived my life. But something unexpected happened. My mother showed up at my office one afternoon. Alone. She looked older, smaller. "You were hurt," she said. Softly. "Yes. We thought you'd understand." "Understand what?" "That sometimes peace is more important than pride." I looked at her, and when was my peace considered? Tears filled her eyes. "We were wrong." Those 3 words meant more than any apology I'd ever heard. Months passed. Mason and Isabella's marriage became strained under financial transparency. Her family valued status. He valued appearance. I valued truth. One evening, my phone rang again. "Mason." This time I answered. "I messed up," he said immediately. I didn't speak. I thought hiding behind your success would make me look strong, and it made me look weak. He sounded different now, less polished, more real. "I should have wanted you there," he continued. "Not because of money, but because you're my brother." I closed my eyes. For the first time I believed him. "What do you want, Mason?" "A chance to fix it." A year later, there was another event, not a wedding, a business launch. Mason had started his own real estate development company. Small, humble, no flashy penthouses. Just mid-range housing projects with transparent financing. He invited me publicly. On stage, during his speech, he said, "My brother once gave me a home, but more importantly, he gave me a lesson. You can't build a future on borrowed image. You have to build it on character." The crowd applauded not because of me, but because of him. And this time it was real. I didn't buy him another penthouse. I didn't need to. Who built his own foundation, and I learned something to. Money can open doors, but it also reveals who's comfortable walking through them with you. My family once said I wasn't invited, but in the end, they learned something powerful. You can exclude a person from a room, but you can't erase the truth of who helped build the house. And sometimes, the strongest move isn't showing up to prove your worth, it's stepping back and letting the truth introduce you anyway. Asterisk, asterisk, my name is still Adrian Keller. And just when I thought the story was over, it wasn't. Because success doesn't just test your enemies, it tests your family in part 2. This is where everything almost fell apart. 6 months after Mason's public apology at his real estate launch, things seemed stable. Not perfect, but stable. His company, Keller Developments, was small but honest. He focused on practical housing instead of flashy skyline projects. No more infinity pools, no more glass towers screaming wealth. Just brick, structure, foundation. And I respected that. We had dinner occasionally, not extravagant dinners, simple ones. He even insisted on paying sometimes. That mattered more than he realized. Isabella stayed quiet through most of it, polite, reserved. The sparkle she had at the wedding was gone, replaced by something more calculating. I noticed. I always noticed. Then one night, Mason called me at 2:14 a.m. No one calls at 2:14 a.m. for good news. I answered immediately. He's threatening to destroy me. His voice was shaking. Who? I asked, already knowing. Isabella's father. Of course, Richard Halstead didn't like losing control, and he definitely didn't like losing narrative. What happened? I asked. Mason swallowed hard. He offered to invest in my company 3 months ago. I declined. I sat up straighter. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you thinking I couldn't stand on my own. I exhaled slowly. Pride. Always pride. And now, he says if I don't accept the partnership, he'll make sure no bank funds my projects. Silence filled the line. This wasn't a threat. This was leverage. Richard Halstead owned stakes in multiple private equity groups. His connections ran deep in commercial financing. Mason had chosen independence. Now, independence had consequences. Do you want my help? I asked carefully. There was a long pause. Yes, not defensive. Not ashamed. Just honest. For the first time in our lives. He wasn't trying to impress me, he was asking as a brother. Okay, I said calmly. But this time, we do it differently. No secret wiring, no hidden support, everything transparent. He hesitated. Transparent how? We become partners. The silence on the other end was heavy. I don't want people saying you built this for me. I'm not building it for you, I replied. I'm investing in a company I believe in, publicly. That difference changed everything. Within 2 weeks, my investment firm acquired a minority stake in Keller Developments. Press release, public filings. Full transparency. Headlines read, Tech billionaire Adrian Keller backs affordable housing expansion. Notice something. They mentioned me, but they also mentioned the mission. Affordable housing. Community infrastructure. Sustainable builds. It wasn't flashy, and that's exactly why it worked. Banks that once hesitated suddenly lined up. Not because Mason needed rescuing, but because credibility went changed the equation. Richard Halstead couldn't block funding without publicly opposing affordable housing initiatives, and that would damage his own reputation. So he stayed quiet for now, but powerful men rarely accept quiet defeat. 3 months later, an article surfaced online. Anonymous sources, allegations, insider favoritism, family-backed shell expansion. The implication was clear. Mason wasn't capable. He was propped up, and this time, it wasn't coming from wedding gossip. That it was strategic, calculated, professional. Sabotage. Mason stormed into my office, holding his phone. This is your world, he snapped. Fix it. I didn't react emotionally. I read the article carefully, then I looked up at sloppy what the claims are vague. No documentation, no named sources. He paced the room. They're questioning my integrity. No, I said calmly. They're testing it. He stopped pacing. What does that mean? It means this is an opportunity. Opportunity doesn't always look like a gift. Sometimes it looks like attack. I scheduled a press conference. Defensive, not angry. Strategic. On stage. We didn't deny the partnership. We highlighted it. We believe in building communities, not just buildings, I said into the microphone. My investment in Keller Developments is fully transparent and rooted in measurable impact. Then Mason stepped forward. And I welcome scrutiny, he said. Every contract, every expense, every permit will make it public. That wasn't my idea. That was his. And that's when I knew something had shifted permanently. The narrative flipped it from spoiled brother to radical transparency and development. Media outlets love a redemption arc, especially when it includes accountability. The sabotage failed, but Richard wasn't finished. A month later, Isabella showed up at my office, alone. She looked composed, elegant, but tired. I need to talk to you, she said. I gestured for her to sit. She didn't waste time. My father thinks you're trying to outmaneuver him. I'm not playing chess, I replied evenly. I'm building housing. She almost smiled. You underestimate him. No, I said quietly. I don't. She leaned forward. He's preparing a hostile move. What kind? He's buying land around 2 of Mason's development zones. My mind immediately began calculating. Control, surrounding lots. Inflate supply costs. Force dependency. Classic pressure tactic. And why are you telling me this? I asked. She looked down briefly. Because I'm tired of what? Of being currency in my father's business wars. That sentence hung heavy in the room for the first time. I didn't see her as the rich hotel heiress. I saw her as someone raised in strategy, not affection. He wants Mason dependent, she continued. If not financially, then strategically. And what do you want? She hesitated. I want a marriage that isn't a battlefield. That was the most honest thing she had ever said to me that night. I met Mason privately. We laid out maps. Property, zones, acquisition patterns. And that's when it became clear Richard wasn't just pressuring. He was preparing takeover leverage. If he controls perimeter land, he can delay permits, Mason muttered, or increase access fees. I added. We sat in silence. Then Mason looked at me. What would you do? I thought carefully. Not fight him, he frowned. What? I'd outbuild him. Instead of reacting defensively, we accelerated development in unaffected zones, streamlined approval, processes secured, community partnerships, before Richard could interfere. We even launched a workforce training program for local builders. Shifted perception again. From corporate battle to community investment. Richard couldn't publicly attack without looking like he was opposing job creation. So he escalated privately. Banks suddenly slowed. Paperwork. Suppliers increased prices. Anonymous. Complaints were filed. The pressure mounted. Mason started losing sleep. You don't have to stay in this. I told him one night. Double quotes. Yes, I do, he said firmly. For what? Pride. For purpose. That answer changed me. He wasn't protecting image anymore. He was protecting mission. The breaking point came 6 months later. Richard requested a meeting with me. Alone. We met in his hotel, penthouse suite overlooking the harbor. Full circle, right? He poured whiskey without asking if I wanted any. I admire your intelligence, he began smoothly. But you're naive. I leaned back. How so? You think this is about housing? It is, he smiled thinly. No, this is about control. There it was, finally spoken. You want Mason grateful, I said calmly. I want him stable. You want him manageable. He didn't deny it. You built an empire, he continued. Surely you understand leverage. I understand freedom, I replied. His eyes hardened. You could make this easy. How? Sell your stake. Step back. Let him return to our ecosystem. Our ecosystem. Like Mason was livestock. And if I don't? Richard sipped his drink. Markets are unpredictable. That wasn't a threat. That was a promise. When I left that meeting, I had a decision to make. Escalate. Or evolve. And here's the thing, most people don't realize, real power isn't loud, it's patient. Over the next year, we quietly diversified, expanded outside Richard's geographic influence, partnered with independent lenders, reduced dependency on vulnerable supply chains. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't dramatic, but it was effective, and slowly his leverage disappeared. 2 years after the wedding incident, something unexpected happened. Richard invited us to dinner. All of us. No tension, no threats, just dinner. Halfway through the meal, he looked at Mason. You've grown. Mason didn't flinch. Yes. Then Richard looked at me. And you were right about one thing. I raised an eyebrow. Control doesn't build loyalty. It was the closest thing to respect he'd ever given me. Not warm. Not friendly, but real. Later that night, Mason and I stood outside under the city lights. You know what's crazy? He said. What? If they hadn't uninvited you, none of this would have happened. I nodded slowly. Pain often plants strange seeds. You don't regret it? He asked. Regret what? Not going to the wedding. I thought about it carefully. He smiled. And started protecting yourself. Exactly. Today, Keller Developments operates in 5 states. Profitable. Transparent. Respected. I still hold minority equity. Not as a savior. As a partner. And our relationship, it's different now. Not built on money, not built on image, built on earned trust in Isabella. She eventually confronted her father about his tactics. Their relationship changed. 2. Sometimes power shifts quietly, not through war but through growth. People online still ask me sometimes, do you regret giving him the penthouse? No, because the penthouse wasn't the gift. The lesson was you can't buy respect, you can't hide behind borrowed success, and you can't build identity on illusion. But you can rebuild if you're brave enough to let the truth break you first. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that family isn't about who invites you into the room. It's about who stands with you when the room tries to shrink you. They once said I wasn't invited. Now no one questions where I belong. And the strongest part, I don't either.